Hi, I'm Shane Del Cohen, your host for this segment of We the People. Some people retire. Do they really? I don't think so. I want to bring to you tonight Martha Gould in her capacity as the Vice Chairman of the National Commission on Libraries and Information Science, which is supposedly a little activity of retirement. Welcome, Martha.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How much have you been home in the last 6 months?
Not much.
Okay, what are we
Not
doing?
much. Well, for the past 6 months, I've been the acting chair of the commission. And as a result, it seems to me I've spent a lot of time in Washington on commission business.
Well, let's talk about, because most people don't every day think about what the National Commission on Libraries and Information Science is.
We're a rather unique group of people. We are a presidential commission. We belong to the executive in the federal government. By law, we are mandated to provide policy advice to the president and to Congress on information and library policy issues. So we are involved with all kinds of things, from filtering on the internet to international library issues, intellectual property rights, copyright issues, access to government documents. We're in the process now of doing a study for the government printing office because Congress would like to go just to electronic publishing, and the commission had to say, oops, I think you better rethink this issue. And so we're in the process now of doing a study to create the standards that one has to look at before one begins to think of what do we publish electronically, what is permanent access, how do you archive electronic publications, what should be archived, what do we do with email, because nobody does memos anymore, so you lose a paper trail in terms particularly of the intent of legislation. So there are just a lot of issues that we're dealing with.
Have any favorites?
Probably my favorite deals with issues around technology and the internet, most particularly the whole issue of the internet and First Amendment rights.
Well, let's go there and talk about it.
All right, let's. I have to say that I'm very proud of Nevada, and I'm very proud of what the Washoe County Library has done, and I'm very proud of what Frankie Sue Del Papa has done as our Attorney General. She has a task force that was headed by Kevin Higgins, who just happens to be the former chair of the Washoe County Library Board. They put out a pamphlet on how to protect your child on the internet. And I think the library probably has handed out thousands. The library has an internet policy that I think makes a lot of sense. They have both filtered and unfiltered terminals. Terminals in the children's room are filtered. There are public access terminals in the adult area, but children cannot use them unless the parent comes in. We give, or I shouldn't say we, the library gives them the pamphlet from the Attorney General, gives them all of our policies and procedures, all the warnings of the bad things that you can find on the internet. And then if the parent says, okay, I still want my child to be able to have unlimited access, the parent signs a permission slip. So we deal directly with the parent. We let them know up front. There are real problems with the internet. There's an old saying, how do you know there isn't a dog at the other end? And it's not just the question of pornography. It's the question of hate sites, revisionist history, stalking, pedophilia, piracy, all of the copyright issues, most particularly when we deal with distance education. So it's a fascinating, and it all boils down to First Amendment rights.
Well, let's go back and say, well, how does it really challenge the First Amendment?
The challenge, when the Internet Decency Act was passed in 1996 as part of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, a number of associations, the Association of American Publishers, the ACLU, the American Library Associations, the National Education Association, it goes on and on and on, booksellers, journalists, press women. They all said, hey, wait a minute, there is such a thing as adults have a right. Children have rights. Yeah, children do have rights. The problem is that the rules of the game have changed. When you deal with hard print, and I think the ultimate technology is and always will be the printed word.
Okay.
But when you deal with cyberspace, you don't know who has put the information on the web. So the question of authenticity, I think, is a vital one. And these are all the issues that people have to be aware of. And much of the dark side of the internet, that's what I call it, the dark side. In a library, when you buy print material or when you buy videotapes, there is a selection process, there are standards, there is a name and a face to whomever did it. So it's authenticated, but you don't know who has done it when it's on the internet.
Right.
So
very anonymous.
The commission held hearings in November of last year, and we put out a pamphlet which we've distributed everywhere, as well as to Congress. Warning of all the good things, the bad things,
And the unknown.
and the unknown, and we have policy recommendations. And basically, the stand of the commission is a very simple one. This is a local governance issue, and the feds should stay out of it.
Has that received good play nationally?
It's received a lot of play nationally. I'm not sure Congress has completely agreed with us. I know that the Commerce Committee in the Senate did pass Senate Bill 92 out. I think it was Senate Bill 92 or 95. It's McCain's bill, tying the education rate, which is part of that universal service, to a library or a school can't have it unless they filter. And what we tried very hard to get them to do is to acknowledge that there is filtering and there is filtering, and you can filter or you can't filter, and it really is a local option, and a parent has the right to make a decision for their child. Not the federal government, but the parent.
And have you gotten some adulation for this? from
No, but it sure got a lot of got a lot of brickbats.
What does that mean to somebody watching today?
I think in terms of Washoe County, in terms of Nevada, it means that the libraries are taking a very pragmatic approach, working with parents to make sure that children are protected from the dark side of the internet. And believe me, it's much more than just pornography.
Like you said, there's
The hate sites, the violence.
Right.
And these are all things that we talked about before Congress talked about them. So I'm
Well,
very
maybe
proud of what the commission has done.
done. Okay, now the commission has taken you also to Vienna lately.
Well, actually, it wasn't the commission. I was asked by the USIA, the United States Information Agency, which no longer exists as of July 1. It's now something in the State Department. I'm not sure what. I think they call it cultural diplomacy. I was asked to go to Vienna as a keynote in a seminar on managing technology and information resources. And the seminar was held for 25 library leaders from the former Eastern Bloc countries that are now, evolving into democratic republics. And we also had librarians there from Poland, from Russia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. It was a fascinating time.
What can you tell us that we really need to know? I mean, what are the issues, for instance, in these countries?
Well, they're trying to learn how to run libraries in a democratic republic. So access to information, most particularly government information, is
It's a whole new
a whole new concept. The concept of a national commission, that Congress actually created a commission that speaks not for the library profession, not for the information profession, but for the people. Our job is to make sure that policy addresses the needs of the people who use libraries, businesses, lifelong learning, students. And I talked about the commission, how we came into being, some of the issues that we're dealing with at this point, and people looked at me and they kept on saying, "You're telling me that you were appointed by the president? How does this happen?" I mean, they're coming to grips with a whole new philosophy. They know nothing about library administration. They don't even know how to create a budget. They've never had to do strategic planning. It's a whole new world for them, and they're looking to the United States
To go through those steps.
yeah, to teach them how to do this. They are on the internet. They do have technology. What's lacking, and what is so scary, is the lack of print resources. They are highly dependent on technology, but they don't have broad...
Well,
the academic libraries and the national libraries or parliamentary libraries have great collections. The public libraries and the school libraries
Are
are
bereft.
just... They're really bereft, yes.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because many of those countries in different times in history have had a tradition of great libraries.
Oh, the National Libraries are phenomenal. I spent part of a day with the director of the National Library in Vienna. It's an incredible building. It's part of the palace of the Hofburg. And one of the things that we talked about was, how do you retrofit an historic building for technology?
Now, there you go.
And
There's
the
a good-
answer is not easily. So they have wires that are dropped from ceilings, and they had to be very, very careful. In the main reading room of the National Library, which is, I mean, it's the most beautiful room I've ever seen. There are murals on the walls, there are murals on the ceilings, there are marble columns with bas-reliefs and statues. It's an incredible room. And in that particular room, they do not have any computers. But there are doors that part of the bookshelves open as doors, and you go into these little cubicles, like, you know, the carols, study carols.
Right. Were they closets before? Or storage areas?
No, there were always little study places for people. And those are electrified, and people can bring their laptops in. But running the wires, lots of wires running along floorboards.
So beware.
Beware.
Now, Vienna hasn't been as war-torn or as economically depressed as some of the other areas.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you were told about national libraries in the other countries?
They're learning to compete for funding, because under communism, they were funded, and they were able to build collections. It's just that nobody could use them. Now everyone can use them, but they don't have money to keep the collections up. So it's a question of, what do we do? Do we buy print, or do we go for technology? And how they wanted to know how we in the United States have handled this whole issue of this, what I call the mad dash to technology. And my comment is, I don't think we've handled it that well either.
We have another thing running that sort of parallels this, is that more and more all our public institutions, people want to run them for profit or as a business, quote unquote.
Well, it is a business. It's the business of the public's right to know.
But that doesn't necessarily have a profit margin that you can take to the bank.
Why should government have a profit margin? Government exists to help people help themselves.
Well, you and I concur on that.
So does the National Commission.
Okay, well, we got a few more, and there may be a few more people out there that believe that, but that is, you know, a conundrum that is facing a lot of public institutions today.
They want to privatize, and that's a real issue that has brought the American Association of Publishers and the Information Industry Association into almost direct conflict with the American Library Association, and to some extent with the Commission, because government information is not covered by copyright. And so many publishers have taken these massive databases And they've added what we call the bells and whistles, the indexes,
Right.
the upfront search engines.
Or
that
their own
allows-
analysis.
Or their own analysis. And
And
they
then they
sell it for
copyright
lots of
money.
They copyright a format. I have a
Right.
great example for you. The State Library just published the latest edition of the Nevada Trustee Handbook, and they wanted to include the chapters that cover library law, Nevada library law. And they discovered when they went to the database that it's been copyrighted by Westlaw. They had to get permission from Westlaw to include Nevada law in their publication. Now, you begin to understand the complexity of the issues, because it's not necessarily content, it's also format that's under copyright. So the whole issue of intellectual property rights in cyberspace is, if my hair wasn't gray when I was pointed to the commission, it would be gray today.
Well, maybe it'll become a sparkling silver with little fires flying out. Technology is of great interest to you.
It is. I was very much involved in moving the Washoe County Library into the 21st century. The database that we created at Washoe County, we then turned over to the State Library, and it became the base for the entire statewide database, which makes a lot of sense. But not everything is on the web. The web is not a library. And I think people have to understand that. I have school librarians who say, well, I don't have to buy a hard copy of the World Book. I have it on compact disc. Okay. The World Book in physical form has, what, 30 volumes?
I haven't read it lately.
So ideally, 30 students could use it at one time. If it's on a CD, how many terminals do you need? What's the cost? And the big issue that really is not being addressed is the strategic planning for the migration to new technologies.
Correct.
What happens to your material? And nobody knows what the shelf life is of a database or of a compact disc, because they begin to degenerate.
Correct.
So when we talk about permanent access for government information, what are we talking about? What do we preserve in hard copy? What are the standards? And one of the things we discovered when we finished phase 2 of the surveying we surveyed, I think, 27 federal agencies, and we discovered some fascinating things. There's no strategic planning for the future. They never thought about the issue of new technologies. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and half the time they don't even know what their publications are. It was an eye-opener.
And I'll add another one to that I've noticed is nobody migrates their data.
No.
So you can have a whole set of publications that are totally gone.
That's forever.
Now, some of us love visiting libraries all over the country because we can do that on the net.
Oh,
and
yes.
sometimes you can order
That's right.
library to library, etc. But some of us still would rather curl up with a book.
Well, put
than
it
a
this way,
computer.
it's very hard to sit in the tub with a computer instead of a
Well,
paperback.
it's probably not very healthy.
No, I don't think so.
Well, what do you expect of the general public?
Interestingly enough, the more we talk about technology, the more people are using libraries, the more books are being circulated, and the more people are buying books from bookstores.
Well, bookstores have seemed to have a real regeneration.
Absolutely, and so have libraries.
And do people know why this is?
I suspect that there are two reasons. First of all, the whole world is not wired, and probably won't be for generations. Second, for many people, it is easier to handle a book than to try to figure out how to search through all of what is on the internet.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are more comfortable that the material they get out of a hard copy reference book is authentic. There are still, including myself, I look at what's on the web, and unless I know the source, I am very antsy about the information I see on the web.
Literacy has always been interrelated with libraries. Do you think that this resurgence of people using the libraries and buying more books or patronizing used bookstores even is a function of literacy across the country?
It's a function of literacy, and it's a function of information literacy. Information literacy is the new buzzword, which I am pleased to say in 1973, in a research paper that was funded by the Commission and done by the then president of the Information Industry Association, we first coined the word, or the president of the, and I can't remember what his name is. I have the paper at home. In fact, I brought it to Vienna with me. He first coined the word information literacy. And information literacy deals primarily with professors, with teachers, with children, with how we teach, how we take technology and the information that we can find, how we can authenticate, how we can evaluate, and how it can be really melded into the curriculum so that it's not an add-on, it becomes an integral part along with books. And people begin to realize that technology is not an end in itself. It is only a tool. It is only a means to an end. It is a tool, the same as a book.
Well, let's talk about that end. We've concentrated a lot about information and data, but what about some of the cultural aspects? What about literature?
It will be, I think, a long time before we will see books being published on the web. And if you go back and you look at the vast collections of books in libraries, of the literatures of the world, the literature of the social sciences, of the humanities, of the hard sciences, you understand that there is a whole history of civilization there. And I have news for you, it's not on the web. And it will probably never be on the web.
Well, in Vienna then, was there any discussion about what the libraries of these various cultures and countries in transition and their literature?
They are moving to protect their literatures. From Vienna, I went on to Tallinn, Estonia, where I did 4 lectures, and I spent a lot of time meeting and talking with Estonian librarians. They are in the process of gathering and maintaining, and this is not only in Estonia, it's in all of the countries, maintaining hard copy of the literature of the history of their country. They look to the internet for very up-to-date information that their government can use or people can use in business. They look to the libraries for the books that give you the history, that give you the literature, and the children's books that teach children how to read and how to enjoy the spoken word and the printed word.
Which leads me to allow you the opportunity, which I already checked with Nancy Cummings. We're both very excited that the Washoe County Library has been selected as the Millennium Project Library to do a sister city project with the library in Guadalupe, Mexico.
Oh, I am so delighted. I had hoped that they would apply. I had nothing to do with the choosing because the committee and the consultant to the commission, I'm not on that. I have nothing to do with it, but they wrote a marvelous project.
Okay, well, let's back up and let the viewers know what the Millennium Projects are in the last few minutes.
Okay. We were asked by the White House if the commission would think in terms of a Millennium Project. And we sort of put on our thinking caps, but Joan Challoner, who is one of our commissioners, came up with the idea of partnering with sister libraries to share resources, to share the types of services, and perhaps even down the road to share staff, with staff going to Guadalupe and staff coming to Reno, Nevada. We have 51 libraries that are the first group. We were told by the head of the Millennium Council at the White House that we are their poster child in terms of a White House Millennium Project, because we are doing this strictly for service, library and information services to children.
Well, I think it's been wonderful, and I think it's really great because Guadalupe as a city is known, just as you said, as a place that has conserved the culture and literature of its people.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a several hundred-year
But it does something else. When you begin to share, and when you do it with children, you understand what's happening. I think we call it understanding. I think we begin to realize that we all belong to the human race. And I know that sounds sort of sappy and
we
whatever.
are all in this
but
game
we
together.
are all here together. And when children learn to communicate with children in another culture, you begin to break down the stereotypes, and you have a growth of understanding.
And you have a love of literature, a love of language,
Oh, yes.
and insight into many, many different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to congratulate you on making libraries humane,
I am
politically correct.
I am
Well,
only one of 14 incredible people.
Well, just keep being incredible. And I hope that people watching will patronize their libraries.
They seem to do this with great regularity.
Well, we need them.
I'm very proud of the Washoe County Library, of the staff. I think Nancy Cummings, the current director, is an incredible woman, and she's doing a fine, fine job.
Well, it's always good to hear about the good things in Nevada and the precedents we're setting and the good models. So keep being retired in the format that you are.
As I leave in the red-eyed special for Washington.
Right, and do give everybody in Washington the best of Nevada.
Thank you.
And come back and again report where Nevada is in the United States as well as the world.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
These are my people. This is a land where my forefathers lie. These are my people. In brotherhood we're heirs of a creed to live by. A creed that proclaims that by loved ones' blood stains, this is my land, and these are my people. These are my people. They were born on and lived by the land. These are my people. And their cities were raised by hard-working hands. And their faces do tell that they're holding on well to this their land. Yes, these are my people. These are my people. These are the ones who will reach for the stars. These are my people. By the light of the earth, you can tell they are ours. A new step to take and a new day will break for this my land. Yes, these are my people. These are my people. Mm-hmm.